Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or it's 2 a.m. Good better already. This is Eagle Eyes on Tech. I am Eagle Falcon. Roughly 70% here, I think-ish, but enough here to actually do a show. Joining with me today is Regret the Van. How are you doing, Regret?
Apparently a lot more than 70%.
Are you at least here at 100%? I'm not asking for 110.
No, I'd say about 30% is still in my bedroom asleep.
Well, 70% plus 70% is... Well, that's basic math. We can't do that. We're a tech show, not a math show. We're instead going to talk about much less complicated things than basic addition, like how leaked NSA malware can help cause one of the biggest hijack, now what's the right word? Ransomware attacks across the globe. Which if you're watching the live version... Which if you're watching the live version is exactly what this banner is. For those of you listening to the audio version, have you ever seen one of those cascading error messages? Imagine that with ransomware, and that's currently our banner on the live version.
And here I thought ransomware was falling out of favor after pretty much most of the encryption methods had been cracked.
Absolutely not. Funny thing enough, actually, what has fallen out of favor is all of the really terrible viruses that you and I dealt with back in, like, our high school days. All the ones that actually infected the computer, locked up the thing, and trashed boot records.
Yeah, I haven't dealt with one of those viruses in a long time.
They're basically extinct now. Almost everyone now is going for some form of ransomware. Now, it could be the kind of ransomware that pretends it's an antivirus and goes, you have 10 quadrillion viruses on it. Those I remember seeing back in... Oh, when was that? 2007, I think was the first time I saw those.
I've always taken it as fix your PC now scam type things that you would see, like a website like, oh, your machine's now horribly infected, blah, 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 blah. And usually my response was to just kill a web browser, launch a virus scan, an authentic virus scan, and be done with it.
Well, a lot of them, what they do is that they would use an exploit in Flash to then force install their virus scanner in the biggest air quotes you've ever seen in your life. Which would basically just be a pop-up that became a piece of the startup software. And they'd usually just call itself something generic like Antivirus 2008 or something like that.
Yeah.
This time around, and this has actually been a lot more common recently, ransomware has gotten a lot less subtle. Like, a lot less subtle.
Well, between botnetting, which if you drag the host machine down, that calls the owner's attention to it. There's a problem, and they will go and attempt to get it resolved.
Yep.
For a botnet, that is not what you want it to do. You want it to kind of sit there in the background and just do what you want it to do, but not bash the computer in.
Yeah. Now, as far as this particular leak goes, this leaked NSA malware that allows this massive rash of attacks to happen, it can very easily be solved and prevented by updating your Windows. The fix is already out.
Okay.
The problem is that right now this is actually crippling a lot of healthcare systems.
Yeah, I was reading that they were attacked. I didn't read anything further than it's like, oh, well there was a massive cyber attack on various healthcare systems.
It's not in, as far as I can tell, now some of it might be intentional, but a lot of it isn't. It's the fact that this exploit got found, and then a bunch of hackers from Nigeria land, or hacker land, just went and started a massive, widespread attack, hit as many things as they could, and because a lot of the businesses, healthcare especially, tries to update as infrequently as possible, they were the most vulnerable. And the main reason they do that is just because they never want to take the risk that they update their workstation and it's now no longer compatible with their MRI machine.
Yep. Well, just in general, enterprise side of things, they don't want to update that often for the risk that it will break other proprietary softwares.
Yeah.
I could name one program at my current workplace. If that program did not start because of an update, the place would be halted until the systems could be rolled back.
Exactly. It's the same sort of thing actually with my boss's laptop. That's actually on a much smaller scale, but he's still on Windows 7 because his accounting software that he uses to bill everything only works right now on Windows 7. You go any newer than that, it doesn't work because it was designed back in 1995.
Oh yeah. See, and that's another problem with enterprise side of software, is that they'll have software. I'm betting there are still banks that are running mainframes, running a COBOL program written back in the 60s. Because
there are.
Yeah, because why bother updating? It's just cheaper to just port, and, well, this is what we get.
Yeah. Though, Yuxi in the chat points out that the actual pop-ups that are showing up in these rash attacks saying that there's a timer on there saying that your files will go away in about a week. Here's a spoiler for you. The way these sort of ransomware attacks work is that it just locks up the computer and forces you to stare at this thing. If you know what you're doing, you can usually find a way around it and just rip it out by hand. But the sole reason of the timer, even though the timer is a week, is to make you panic and just throw money at the problem and make it go away.
Yeah, because I mean, my preferred method when dealing with something like that is just simply to mount pretty much drop a live CD in, mount the user folder, transfer it, no executable transfer, just the files, and then F-disk format, and reinstall.
Yeah, it all depends on how crafty they are.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them I find out they're not all that crafty, and you can easily get around this by just booting with safe mode. The thing doesn't boot up. You can go start disabling the startup functions and the services for it. And then just run something like a Malwarebytes and it'll just remove it.
Mm-hmm.
9 times out of 10 that usually works. Then there's that 1 time out of 10 where it's like, oh my god, the bastard knew what he was doing.
There was some actual competency behind this one.
And that's when you know you have a problem.
Yep.
That's when you get the good ones.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's move on to probably my least favorite topic on this entire list, but one that still has to be talked about a little bit.
Yes.
And that being everyone patting John Oliver on the back for possibly spurring up to 150,000 comments to the FCC on net neutrality and accidentally DDoSing the FCC's tiny little site down into oblivion.
Yep.
I don't get why this is a story, to be quite honest. I mean, I know why it's a story, but I also don't get why it's a story.
You actually have me there. I'm not sure why that is a particular story. Why we're having to go through this again.
I mean, I've had this same statement ever since the concept of net neutrality was ever brought up in the first place. And that's why on earth do so many people want the FCC of all organizations to be the arbiters of fairness? The FCC, who for the longest time were afraid of the word but.
The reasoning I understand it for the FCC is that the FCC actually has teeth as a regulatory agency. For teeth for as much as a U.S. three-letter agency has.
Here's the other thing. Here's the thing, though. You know what else has teeth? The law. I don't understand. Okay. If your goal for the whole point of neutrality is to have it so that all traffic is treated the same, so that all traffic is allowed to get from one point to another, that there are no toll booths on the fiber, basically. That's it. It's not like we're trying to pass the new cure-all for healthcare that's going to be easily 10 Bibles long. Just call your senator. Call your congressman. Have a law passed. It'd be 20 pages tops.
Well, here's the thing about laws, is that, well, okay, the law will say, sure, all traffic must be treated equally, except some traffic is more equal than others. The law will completely self-defeat itself. And then if it doesn't, as soon as it gets to Lord Dampnut's desk, out into the trash it goes.
Look, we could either go with whatever the Congress and the president was when this whole thing first came up, or we can go with it now. I'm going to throw all of that out for a minute. Because because the answer has been the same regardless of who has been sitting in what chairs. The answer has been, since this whole thing came up in 2010, the FCC has to do it. Which has been baffling to me. That we would just... Because that's the thing when it comes to it. It's not like we're begging the FCC to enforce one small set of rules. The begging has been to have the FCC treat this as a utility. Someone just made the cup overflow on Twitch. I just looked over in the corner of my eye and it just was just downpouring bits onto the cup.
Well, congratulations, it's overfilled.
It is now overfilled. And that's the other thing. The FCC, when push comes to shove, there's only one person they answer to, and that's Congress. And most days, the FCC can do whatever they want, and Congress is still getting their pants on. It has just been... It makes no sense that you'd want to just give the FCC this much power over this sort of thing, when it's something that it should be a 20 to 30 page law.
Yeah. What I've seen a lot of the proposals, is actually move it from the FCC to another 3-letter organization, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission.
The FTC already has regulatory authority over it, but that's still not enough for everyone cheerleading net neutrality. That's the other part that is also just kind of baffling with John Oliver and these 150,000 people who are either very informant on the issue, but are still dead set on the FCC in charge of this, or very uninformed about it. I'm not entirely sure what.
At its core, however, I think we could both agree that the concept is that all data is equal, regardless if it comes from a big company or a little company.
I will agree with that. That Netflix should not get to my thing faster than Twitch just because whoever the heck my ISP now is, I've literally lost track, likes Netflix more than Twitch.
Pretty much.
No, you use two big giants. Okay, fine. That Beam gets to my system as fast as Twitch. Oh wait, Beam's also owned by... Oh, god dang it. Who's a small one? Hitbox. They're my favorite little media company to hate. Let's actually move off the negative topics. Let's move on to something a lot more fascinating.
Okay.
So, last week, I gave flack to... Was it last week or the week before? I can't remember now. I think it was last week that AMD came out with the RX 580, and it was literally nothing. It was just the 480 overclocked.
Alright, so what did NVIDIA do so that we can give NVIDIA shit?
They showed off the most powerful GPU in the world. Again.
Right. Well then.
They have shown off a GPU known as the NVIDIA Tesla V100. Now, for those of you not in the know, your statement's going to be, what does that mean? You just listed a bunch of words and numbers. Tesla is the subname of NVIDIA's GPUs that are used in supercomputers. So for those of you planning to build your rig right now, no, you're not getting this card. Don't even try. Just don't. You're better off without it. Even though you're going to want this by the time I'm done. The model number is the GPU die that's used, the V100. The V stands for what the architecture is. The 1 is the revision. This is the first revision. And then the 2 zeros after that is how refined down it is. 00 means that this is the most powerful this revision of this architecture is ever going to be. And the V is Volta. For those of you who don't know, the recent GPUs we've been having, the GTX 10 series, is all Pascal. Not the lame huggy robot from Nier Automata, but actually it might be, I don't know. But
yeah, I'm actually looking at a picture of this chip of pretty much one of the engineers, I would assume, or director, holding I wouldn't say it's a card yet. It's about the size of a smartphone, but you can distinctly see on this card, you can see the GPU chip, and that is a very large GPU chip for it. Well, that's just a large chip in general.
Yes, it is enormous. But now, despite the fact that you're not going to see this exact GPU in basically anything, unless you work in supercomputers, in which case, call me. This tells us quite a few things about what the GTX 11 series is going to be. First off, it is not going to be the P200 series. It's not going to be a revision of Pascal. It's going to be Volta. It's going to be a new architecture. And this new architecture, just comparing the V100 to the P100, which is last gen's, you're looking at roughly a 40% improvement just between those two alone. And actually even far better improvements when you're looking at a lot of other things that help things like artificial intelligence and other such supercomputing technologies. So, the next time a fan of AMD graphic cards tells you that they didn't need to push out Vega with this last release, shove this in his face. They really needed to have the RX 500 Series B Vega. They absolutely needed the 500 Series to take them out of Polaris, which turned out to just be a train wreck of a project. Because now Nvidia's just going to lap them in this race.
Yeah.
More than they already have.
And according to a source that I have, this is actually going to be showing up in their compute servers at the end of 2017. So later this year, this chip will be on the enterprise marketplace. And now it's going to be shipping for $1,500,000 for a server, but for supercomputing, that's kind of meh.
Wait, $1,500,000?
Yeah, 150,000. I think
repeat the number of zeros again.
150,000.
So 150,000. Okay.
150,000. Sorry.
Because the way you phrased that sounded like it was 1.5 million. And
okay, I can see that.
I thought I lost my mind for a minute.
So for 150,000, that server will be available on the corporate marketplace.
That's a lot of bits. There's just more and more bits going into that cup. I mean, it's no matter how you look at it, it's a crazy huge, crazy powerful, crazy expensive GPU. And it's coming. Not unlike Elon Musk's crazy, insane car transporting tunnel that I thought was a joke. And the video won't stop either. It just started autoplaying against my will. So we talked about this, 2 weeks ago?
I think we did. That it started off with Elon Musk wants to dig tunnels under LA highway system, but doesn't have permission to do so from LA itself.
I said at the time that this is not a great plan. This is a plan that shouldn't have gotten anywhere. But just do anything else. Make a subway. Make a second highway on top of your current highway. Do anything but this. This is a colossal waste of money, and literally inventing jetpacks would be less expensive. The guy's already got a prototype. Now, we don't know the scale. That's one thing that everyone's commented. It could just be a small-scale sort of affair. It could actually be 2 scale, and this exists underneath Area 51 somewhere. Who knows? But I said it 2 weeks ago, or last week. I don't remember. I'm going to say it again. For the love of God, Elon Musk, do anything else but this.
I'm actually more amazed that we're actually finally seeing pictures of some of the test tunnels, and for this being announced not that long ago, the tunnels actually look remarkably complete.
Which means he's been working on... God.
He's been working on this for quite some time, so...
Make your cars! For the love of God! How back-ordered is the Model 3 for Tesla? Just make the cars!
Probably extensively back-ordered.
Perfect your solar panels! Work on your Mars... The Mars colony thing makes more sense than this. Not by much. But it does. It's just the one thing I ask. In fact, actually, you know what this actually shows signs of? This shows signs of someone suffering from ADD and doing nothing to counterbalance it. Like, I suffer from ADD. I've learned to cope with it. Step 1. Identify the fact you have ADD. Step 2. Always keep that in the back of your mind. Step 3. Anytime you think you have wandered away, stop, think, focus, get back on track. Elon Musk's on step 0!
You'd be amazed how often that stop, think, refocus is actually kind of difficult. I also have ADHD.
Oh, trust me, I know. I understand. I know it's difficult sometimes, but Elon Musk is clearly showing signs of not even trying.
Yeah.
I urge you, please. Focus. Maybe 2 or 3 crazy out there ideas at a time, please. That actually have a chance of success and aren't a giant financial boondoggle. Because so far, all I see the boring company actually doing is boring a giant money hole to throw the money into.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, we move on to a product that is not going to be a money hole. It is going to be a money printing machine. For reasons that nobody can explain.
More IoT things to be compromised.
Yeah, so last week there was rumors that the Amazon Echo Show was going to be a thing. And that before you could even contemplate whether the Echo Show was actually going to be a real thing or not, it went and became a real thing. Very, 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 very quickly. It is a $230 device with a large speaker on it and a 7-inch screen on it and a camera that will do everything the Amazon Echo currently does. And a few other things because it has a screen. Things like display recipes. Or let you voice chat. Or basically anything you could have done with a tablet. Why is this a thing?
Because Amazon... The reason it's just is like, oh great, it's another IoT.
IoT, for those of you who don't know, stands for Internet of Things.
Which in the first place really shouldn't exist. I do not need a Bluetooth light bulb.
What? You don't?
No. However, what has been coming out of the Internet of Things is very cheap, very flexible home automation. And I could see Amazon using the Echo Show as a means to pretty much tie this conglomerate mess of home automation together.
It could, it couldn't. It's really hard to say. The problem is, right now with the Internet of Things, is the fact that security is abysmal on it, and even a central hub like this is not going to help that level of security.
No, it's still, in security terms, is still horribly broken.
Yeah, it is.
So much so that there are, I think it was, gray hat hackers in a botnet that's been going around, taking over IoT devices and closing down ports. I've so far read 2 of these botnets are running around to do just that.
Now, let me just start off by where I come down on this whole Amazon Echo fad. Here's how technology has evolved. 2001 is the MP3 player breakthrough, which started with Sony's Flash player and then was refined by the iPod to hold music on a compact device. The iPod then evolved and eventually became the iPhone, which then took some smartphone capabilities that BlackBerry had to then put a pocket-sized computer in your pocket. Later on, Apple then once again, after taking some cues from other tablet makers such as Fujitsu, comes out with the iPad, makes a larger pocket-sized computer. Which these pocket-sized computers started to have virtual assistants. Siri was the first one that comes to mind that actually was like an assistant that actually listened to your voice instead of just being like a Google Now that you had to talk to like this in a monotone and had to say specifically what you wanted and start talking very inhumanly. Siri started breaking that boundary. The Echo basically took that another level, except it stripped away everything. that Siri and eventually Cortana, as Stumpin' Vanos is saying in the chat as well. I mean, Cortana did evolve that as well. I'll give them credit there. It took away everything those devices had, and now it is slowly putting it back in, and Amazon's being called a genius. I might technically be an employee of Amazon. That's not going to stop me from saying, you know what? This is kind of stepping backwards. We've basically now come full circle, and this is just an iPad mini on a stand. I think I've nailed it.
Yeah, you know, I have an even cheaper solution to it.
Is this where you break out that book?
No. Boom. Tablet with a keyboard notch. Hey, look, it's actually more capable, probably.
Yeah. I mean, granted, this has a better speaker than most tablets. Most tablets, they have a quarter-size speaker. This one clearly has something bigger in it. So it's got that going for it. But it's going to be praised as the next revolutionary thing, and it really isn't. Also, the discussion in chat, they're talking about right now, what are all the assistants? There is Alexa for Amazon, Siri for Apple, Cortana for Microsoft, and Google's actually does have a name. I can't remember off the top of my head what the Google Assistant's name is. Heck, here, let's ask Cortana. Hey, Cortana. What is the Google Assistant? Alright, well that shows how useful that was. And then suddenly we move on. In fact, actually... You know, I'm not even going to talk... I was going to talk about this side story about Nucleus, a startup that was invested in by Amazon, claiming that Amazon stole from them to make the new Echo. But I'm going to actually pass on that for now until I can find more information. Because the more and more I thought about that one after doing some research, just like, something doesn't smell right on this one. So actually, I'm going to avoid that one. On the spot decision. It has been decided. Instead, let's talk about Fuchsia OS. We now have confirmations that Fuchsia OS actually exists. And basically what this is going to be is a kernel, much like Linux, being developed by Google. To actually call Fuchsia OS an OS is technically incorrect. Because really, right now, it's the development of a kernel. A kernel in which they really could just make any operating system they want based off it. Though they're probably only going to make, like, 1 to 5. Really, when push comes to shove. And to answer chat's question, yes, you do hear wind chimes. I have the window wide open. Because otherwise these studio lights get hot. And therefore toast me. And I don't like being toast.
Okay. What I'm just looking through here, it's actually being aimed at being an incredibly lightweight system designed to run on even IoT things. So
yes,
my Bluetooth light bulb could be running an operating system And if that sounds as ridiculous as it sounded, a light bulb running an operating system, this is where we are now.
Welcome to 2017.
However, one could actually hope that a proper standardized operating system with a proper security implementation would actually cut down on the IoT botnets that have been roaming around.
Yeah, there is that. That could help quite a lot. No longer would Zeus roam around made up of 10 million light bulbs going down and attacking Blizzard at will. Because we need our Overwatch fix.
Yeah. It currently says it's based off of a BSD and apparently they're getting some resources from MIT, so could be interesting. And it is backwards compatible with Android.
I hope that because of that, it doesn't interfere with stability.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to lie. Because really, Google's hope in the future for a more stable operating system for their phones, its fate is going to depend on Fuchsia OS. Android is just simply too unstable. The more and more they do, the less and less it's going to go. And granted, I know a lot of the instability is caused by Samsung throwing their half-baked UI on top of an unstable operating system, or LG throwing their half-baked UI on top of an unstable operating system. I get all that. Trust me. I get all that. So I do hope that being backwards compatible does work as well on paper as it does in real life. Wait, no, I have that backwards. That it works as well in real life as it does on paper. Yeah, that's right.
I am going to wait until I'm actually seeing some pretty much an Android kernel and this Fuchsia kernel running side by side, and pretty much identical pokes, identical stress testing, and see which one decides to call it quits and segfaults.
Time will tell. I mean, more than likely, we're about, what would you say, 3 years out? I mean, right now we're only just getting word that it actually exists.
Mm-hmm.
Could be they're a lot further along and they're just being very secretive about that. Who knows? Let's talk about why Microsoft hates RAM.
Oh, Microsoft.
So, Microsoft did a whole bunch of announcements this week. A lot of them are very much, just kind of here's what we expect for the future sort of affairs. And also a lot of kind of sort of creepy Big Brother sort of conveniences that I'm not going to talk about just because I don't have all the information on them yet. I am going to talk about what they're calling Fluent Design System. And how much I both love this and hate this with the fiery passion of 1,000 suns. Now you might be asking if the love is the fiery passion of 1,000 suns or the hate is the fiery passion of 1,000 suns. The correct answer is both. One thing that macOS has had over Windows for the longest time, and it's less and less now, is that macOS for the longest time has looked a lot more beautiful to the consumer eye. The reflective dock, the crisp, clean icons, it's all looked so shiny and all that jazz, while it's been clunking along in the background. You see a spinning pinwheel for 5 minutes trying to load up a notepad. macOS has always looked prettier. Windows has not. It has looked ugly. Ugly as you could possibly imagine. It has looked uglier than this water bottle I'm holding, and it's just a stainless steel tube. Fluent design is Microsoft's way of actually trying to surpass macOS in looking pretty. To which I love it. I absolutely love the idea of using the operating system and having everything look better, including trying to give the illusion of depth in just simple things like the UI. Having the lighting even make a more interesting impact as you touch it. That was one of the things I liked about Vista. That was actually the only thing I liked about Vista. Wait, yeah, that was the only thing. So if I love all it, why do I hate it? I will list off what I'm running currently on my 6-core high-end workstation. I am running Spreaker Studio that is recording me and Regret the Van for the podcast. I am running Google Chrome with a bunch of browser tabs. I am running OBS that is currently transmitting out to Twitch. I am running Google Hangouts, and I am running Restream Chat Client that lets people yell at me in chat. My CPU usage currently is only 32%. That's not that bad. GPU usage is 22%. Again, not too bad. RAM usage is 77%. 9.4 gigabytes used, 2.7 free. Without upgrading my RAM, my rig could not handle it. And I'm not even running anything. I'm running nothing. These are all background applications. The most intensive one being OBS. Which, admittedly, that does chew a ton of resources on its own. That's actually using up 9% of the CPU on its own. And I think about 3 gigs of RAM.
All right. Whereas I'm looking at, I just called up Resource Monitor on my Dell T5500, which is an older machine, but is an octa-core machine. And it's showing that I currently have about 50% utilization of my processors and 23% utilization of my RAM with about 24 gigabytes still open to be used.
Here's the thing, though. How many PCs out there would have to upgrade to run this normally? I mean, we're both using high-end workstations.
Yes.
Mine, admittedly, mine needs some fine-tuning in RAM usage right now because it's really high. And I'm not sure if that's just because OBS requires a lot based on everything I run with it, or what the story is. But let's say I was using... Actually, here's a good example. I've got a Dell Latitude E6230 sitting over there on top of my dresser. Dual-core processor, integrated Intel graphic card, 6 gigs of RAM. That would not run this. It would come to a screeching halt trying to run this. This would be this update it'd be Vista all over again. To a certain degree, anyway. I mean, it wouldn't bring the massive amounts of printer incompatibility that Vista did. But it is going to require more GPU.
Incompatibility.
Printer was the biggest complaint, though. That's the only reason I'm going to call it the printer incompatibility.
I found incompatibilities across the board. Alright, I need this. I'm just gonna poke Toaster to see what Toaster's resource monitor is sitting at. Which you're probably going to hate me. Because Toaster is doing absolutely shit right now.
Isn't Toaster your, first off, still not an exclusive podcast. Isn't Toaster your Haswell quad-core rig that you're wasting on doing nothing?
Yes, Toaster is the Haswell quad-core.
Yes, that one.
Is at 1% processor utilization and 16% RAM usage with about 6.5 gigabytes open. I'm not sorry.
You should be. You're wasting it.
Actually, I've actually been using Toaster more for network monitoring right now.
So let's get out of the world of us talking about our massive Core i5 top tier CPUs that should be used for gaming, but you still insist on not doing that. Or the high-powered Xeons that we're wasting on doing a silly podcast. Let's actually go into the world of what the average user uses for a computer.
So an i3 3.2 gigahertz
i3 or
with
Pentium
8 gigabytes of RAM.
And no discrete graphic card.
Yes. That sounds about right.
How many of them, if they didn't buy their computer within this last year, are going to have to upgrade? Or at least add, like, a GT 1040?
Well, I actually have an i3 with 8 gigabytes of RAM. I don't do anything with it because i3. And it's also a gateway box. I could dig the thing out, drop Windows 10 on it, and then in a few months drop this update on it, and just see how functional this machine is.
Oh, I could do the same thing too. I'm looking at it from a hypothetical standpoint and see a whole lot of disaster happening.
It has the potential, and that's the thing with Microsoft, is you always go, oh, we're going to do this, and I'm looking at it going, oh, what's going to break now?
Now, maybe there'll be some forethought, and it can be enabled and disabled, much like Arrow was.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
They may even do a targeted rollout of, well, we think this version of Windows is right for you. We're going to give you this update where somebody who just uses, well, I just use Windows to go onto Memebook and play shitty Flash games on my browser. This update would be completely wasted on them.
Can we please call Facebook something other than Memebook? Because Memebook actually makes it sound like there's content there.
Anyways.
Just saying. Because, I mean, there's still nothing of value at Facebook. I'm not saying this to be like a cultist mantra. I'm stating facts. You totally don't like Facebook? Already in the chat, we're getting Bookface, Sharebook, and Minion memes. All of which you're all correct. You are all correct. Let's talk about Snapchat for a minute.
Here's my favorite Facebook. So here's a book, Halo First Strike.
And while Regret gives himself a concussion, I'm going to talk about Snapchat. So, much like Regret hitting himself in the face with a book, Snapchat kind of did that with their stock price. This was kind of one of the more baffling things when I first heard. So, Snap, if you don't know, they went public, 2 months ago? 3 months ago-ish?
Something like that. They did an IPO not that long ago.
And they came out, their starting price was like $20. Which seemed $20 too high for a company where the only thing they made money on was the ugliest sunglasses I have ever seen in my entire life. Yes, this is including those single pieces of plastic with the slots in them. Which I still can't believe worked. I mean, outside of that, their primary product, which is Snapchat, they make no money on. It's a free-to-use app. There are no ads. There cannot be any targeted advertising in them. And the only thing I think of that they make some money on is maybe some filters. Maybe. But as far as I can tell from other people I've talked to, it doesn't charge for that. So why people thought this was a worthy investment baffled me. And it turns out, I was right! It wasn't a good investment because the price dropped by 60% after their first quarter earnings. I said 60%, didn't I? It dropped by like 40%.
That's still for a stock to take a plunge of 40%. That's not
good. 60 would be horrific. That'd be like
60 would be.
That's people jumping out. That's people jumping out of office buildings. Terrible. 40% is bashing your head against your desk in the office building. Terrible. Mm-hmm. Which now I feel like I need to go make a visual scale of how bad percentage drops are.
It might be helpful. Anyways, what I'm kind of looking at, like Snapchat, and this is not the first time we've seen a social media platform do an IPO. I was amazed when Twitter a few years back did an IPO and actually did as well as it did. I'm wondering if pretty much we're going to see a .com bubble of social media stuffs.
Here's the thing that's really baffling, though. Twitter, at least, had a plan to make money. Stare at your tweets, figure out what you like, target advertisements at you, profit. The whole meme of step 1, actually do something, step 2, step 3, profit. Snapchat never seemed to have a step 1. It was just profit. Twitter at least had the step 1, and even they didn't meet any expectation. Merely because all people did, for the most part, and I myself has become guilty of this somehow, is just spam out your content and almost never read tweets or ever care about the ads.
Yeah.
In fact, the advertisers who make the most, who benefit the most off the advertising format that is Twitter, they don't even promote their own tweets. They just look to make their company's tweets become memes, like Wendy's.
One of the easiest ways to the Imgur front page.
Pretty much.
Memes.
that's pretty much the most successful advertising Wendy's has had for the longest time. And it started with a Twitter war that their social media expert had with a bunch of trolls, which then exploded into a meme. And I can't even count how many times people were posting on various Discords that I visit the various Twitter memes, and then comments going, it's like, I don't know why, but all of a sudden I really want a Wendy's burger.
I can't even think of the last time I was at a Wendy's.
I can't either, but that's also because none of my driving routes currently go anywhere close to a Wendy's. Or worse, the Wendy's I'd have to go to is across the street, and there's no easy way to turn with a big 16-foot truck. You know, suddenly when you're 16, when you're driving a vehicle that's 16 feet long, suddenly a U-turn's a big deal. You're just like, oh, that's so hard.
Mm-hmm.
I don't wanna.
Yeah, whereas the closest Wendy's to me is kind of one of the ones that you kind of look at and go, that's nice that there's a Wendy's there. I'm surprised it hasn't been robbed and shut down yet.
This podcast is not brought to you by Wendy's. Or Twitter, or Snapchat, or anything that we've talked about. We are not sponsored. At all. This is a hobby. I suddenly felt the need for that disclaimer. Because we literally just spent 2 minutes talking about Wendy's. What was my point?
Yeah, what was your point?
Oh yeah, Snapchat is hemorrhaging money. How could I forget? Let's move on. Oh wait, actually we don't have much time. So I'll just bring you this. There is a Sailor Moon phone out there. And with that, we're out of time. That's how I'm ending this. I have declared it so. There is a Sailor Moon phone out there. Complete with silly Sailor Moon wand as a selfie stick. It exists. That's gonna conclude. That concludes it for us. You can find me at twitch.tv/eagle_falcon. You can find Regret at twitch.tv/regret_the_van. I will be back next week, 3 o'clock Central Time. Take care, everyone. Rest well. Good night.